So hi and welcome to another video, and today I'm excited to take a look at this G-Wolf Skoll here with the honeycomb lightweight design, which I've not seen before in an ergonomic mouse. For those of you not familiar with my channel, I go through a lot more detail than most people do. We use a force gauge to understand the actuation force required to press the buttons, to push the mouse across a mousepad, as well as some other tests and charts to give you an idea of how this mouse will compare to other mice I've reviewed out in the market. Check out my Beardedbob website, which is beardedbob.com, and on there also I've got a voting system which allows you to vote for which videos you want to see next on my channel. The last video to be voted for was the G Pro wireless weight reduction video which I've done, and the next one that's coming out very soon is the G305 weight reduction. So if you want to prioritize other videos, because a lot of people have been asking for things like G502 or the 403, then get on that voting system and pick the one that you want to see next. So the G-Wolf is about to be launched. If it hasn't already been launched now, it comes in at a price range of $58.90. This one was sent out to me by X-Ray Pad to take a look at. So I accepted the offer and I thought, let's put it through the same tests. Let's show everybody what this mouse is about. So let's start with the design. Well, this is an ergonomic right-handed mouse and it's very similar shape to the Zowie EC2 range. This is the first one I've seen to have the honeycomb weight-saving holes applied to it. It's got a matte coating, grey front, left and right button, which then transitions into a black rear. The sides as well are black, and they just use a standard good premium plastic. There's no coating. There's a logo just behind the scroll wheel here. It's nice and subtle, and that's the only branding on this mouse. This mouse is a 7-button combination. You've got a standard left and right button. You've got 2 side buttons on the left-hand side. You've got 2 buttons underneath for DPI and for the RGB lighting, and you've got a scroll wheel press down as well. The mouse comes with 4 Teflon feet here. We'll see how that goes on. There's no circle ring one around the sensor like you do see on some mice, and we'll see later on the friction test how the Teflon pads perform. It's got RGB light in this mouse, and it's in a bit of a different position here. It's just around the base, this RGB lighting. It goes around on the front to where the cable attaches, and on the rear there is no lighting. It stops it just at the back on the sides. The buttons are attached to this shell. They're not independent, like on something like the G Pro wireless. So this is how it looks in my hand. My hand's an 18 centimeter by 9 centimeter, and I've got a 5 center thumb from the bottom knuckle. My grip's generally a relaxed claw palm hybrid. This wouldn't be suited, in my opinion, for a claw grip. It is more suited to a palm grip, because even in my relaxed palm here, I'm not really using the arch support as you would expect from this kind of ergonomic design. So the build quality, well, a lot of mice recently in this lightweight range have been having issues with side flex, and I'm glad to report that this G-Wolf Skoll here has no issues with the flex. These are extra strong ridge sides, so you won't be getting any false clicks. So that's good news. The left and right buttons have no more sideways motion than any other mice here. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. You always get a little bit of flex, but nothing here that you should be worried about, and I've not noticed it moving when the mouse button is pushed fully down onto the shell either. This mouse is finished in a really nice plastic overall. The sides feel premium, the top shell feels premium with this matte coating. So overall, this is a rock solid mouse. There's no rattles, there's no squeaks, there's no creaks. It's really well built here. Quite impressed really with the build quality on this one, given its price range that we're looking at here. So just going to go quickly over the 3360 here. We've done this sensor plenty of times here, and nothing really was any different here. You can see in the charts here that it performs just like the Air 58 and also the Zowie S2. The only difference I saw was on the rapid lift-off and click test, where it didn't tend to wander, which was unusual, because every other 3360 I've done has done that. But other than that, there was nothing to report, and I didn't do any slam tests with this sensor because none of them have spun out yet, and I don't expect this one to either. If it does on your mousepad or your setup, let me know, because I'd be interested to hear if you have any problems. So going into the 3D Aim test here that I've done for a lot of them, and 3D Aim website has changed. They've changed the way it works, which means all the results we've been using recently are now void. I can't find the option where it resets it back to where it was 2 weeks ago. So from now on, we'll use the new settings here where I set it on Counter-Strike, and I'm using the medium hardness, which basically you've got now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all 3 of my measurements. So I do 3 runs on this, and I'm going to average them, and I'm going to show you the highest score as well. So we get a better idea and more consistency of these scores rather than just what my highest score was. So my average score was 102,593. And the maximum high score that I got was 105,278. So we're going to use those going forward. I'm going to re-benchmark all the mice that I've done recently so we can put this in a comparison table going forward. But this is now the new starting point for this AIM test here. Feel free to put your score in the comments there and what mouse you're using and also what pad you're using, because it'll be interesting to see what kind of scores you're getting here going forward. So we're going to do the human benchmark test. Obviously there's some human element to these tests, so you have to try and take that into account. The only one that you wouldn't see that in potentially is the bump test. And I've added that one in here now because a few people have asked me to go into a little bit more detail in the latency and specifically on this mouse. So the human benchmark test here came in at an average of 180 milliseconds. That's 4 milliseconds over what the average has been. For most of the mice here, they're normally around 176 milliseconds. But again, 4 milliseconds could be down to me. It's still a very small number here. So doing the blood test here for a left mouse button, it came with an average of 164 milliseconds, which isn't really any different to what we'd expect going forward as well. And the right button came in with an average of 160 milliseconds. So again, pretty normal results here really. And then we move to the bump test. It's using the same software here and you bump two of the mice buttons together. So I took the Zowie EC2 here and I competed it against this G-Wolf Skoll here, and the Zowie won every time on the left mouse button and on the right mouse button. So the Zowie was certainly quicker here in this test, and you can see the results here in these charts. So let's get into how the buttons feel here. Well, the left and right mouse button are using the OMRUN 50 million click, and these are quite common. We've seen these before. People tend to think they're a little bit mushy. For me, I don't mind them. I quite like them on my G Pro wireless anyway, so I'm kind of used to them at the moment. Is there any pre or post travel in these buttons? Well, I couldn't see too much. There's a fraction of a pre-travel and there's certainly a little bit of post travel, especially on the left button. But again, it was nothing really that stood out compared to the other mice that I've tested. The side buttons feel nice. They've got a really sharp click on them. I can't tell you what the switch is yet, but as part of the teardown that I've done for many mice here, once we've done that, we'll be able to take a good look and see what the switches are inside here. So it is coming. Don't worry, we're going to have a look inside this mouse in the very near future. So the scroll wheel feels quite light here to click. It's also very easy to scroll forwards and backwards. There is a little bit of tactile feedback, but it's not very strong. So it almost free rolls this scroll wheel, but it doesn't because it does have some tactile feedback. And overall, I had no issues with the buttons here whatsoever. So let's hear what they sound like. So applying the force gauge meter here, we take 3 meter readings. I'm going to show you one here, and I'm just going to tell you what the average is because there's quite a lot of readings I take here and that can get quite intense and probably just drag out the video. So let me just give you the averages here of 3 readings per position. So on the force readings here, the smaller the number, the lighter the click, the higher the number, the harder it is to press. So the very front of the left mouse button came with an average of 41 grams. The middle left button came in with an average of 64 grams, and the rear of this left button came in with an average of 121 grams. The right front came in with an average of 42 grams. The middle right came with an average of 75 grams. And the rear right came with an average of 131 grams. The front side button came with an average of 97 grams. The back side button came with an average of 120 grams. And the scroll press came with an average of 177 grams. And if you're interested, there's 25 notches in the scroll wheel. So when we take a look at this first chart, which shows each individual position on the left and right mouse button here, you can see that the mouse force here is sitting around the middle here. There's nothing, it's not a too light a click and it's not too heavy a click. What I've done here now as well is add an additional chart here. So the first chart's really for people that like to get really into the detail here. If you understand where your finger position is on the mouse, on the buttons. And the second one is a bit more of an overall one, where I've just averaged the right mouse button click and the left mouse button click. You can see here the skull at the top here is in the middle of the playing ground here. It's not too light, as we said, and it's not too heavy either. So it's got a nice click, this mouse. Looking again at the side buttons here in the recent charts, I will be doing some more of this detail. I need to capture some of the other detail. But you can see here from the ones recently that the side buttons here are probably a little bit on the stronger side than what we've done recently here. What is interesting here is this has the lightest click scroll wheel. I don't think you're going to press accidentally because it's not that light, but it's certainly quite easy to press here. And looking at these charts compared to the other ones we've taken, this one is the lightest we've used yet. So moving on here to what people probably want to understand a little bit more here is the weight. What was nice to see here on the G-Wolf was they actually weighed the mouse and showed it with the cable, which a lot of manufacturers don't do. So we understand that the 66 grams should be with a bit of cable as well. What they've stated here is it's 65 grams with an additional 2 grams with the cable. So you maybe get 67 grams here. When I weighed this mouse, it came in dead on at 66 grams, which was great to see. It shows that they're being true to what they're saying in the weight, where some other companies that we've weighed the mice for haven't always been truly accurate, should we say. So now we're going to do the Mousepad friction test here, where we push it across the mousepad. If you're not familiar with how these meter readings are, if you're new to the channel, this is what they represent. So if you're not familiar how we take the measurements here across the pad, we take 4 measurements. We take an NSW, which is a normal rotated pad, sideways. We take an NFW, which is normal forwards. We then rotate the pad, and we take an RSW measurement, which is rotated sideways, and we take an RFW, which is rotated forwards. Now, when the pad's in its normal rotation, the 2 measurements that you want to focus on, and we do that in the averages here on these charts that I'll show you, is you want to look at the NFW and the RSW, so normal forward and rotated sideways. What I'm a little bit concerned about going off things like the G305 is how small these skates are and whether they're going to dig into the pad. What is nice to see here is that they have rounded off the feet, so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of friction results we get in these tests. So like I do with all my mouse feet tests here, in this one I'm taking 3 readings and then I'm using an average, and then I'm going to read that out to you. So the smaller the number, the faster it is, or the easier it is to push across the pad. And the larger the number, the more control you've got, or the more friction it's creating on the pad itself. So the NSW here was 23 grams. The NFW was 25 grams. The RSW was 23 grams. The RFW was 20 grams, which gives it an average of 24 grams. When we take a look at this chart here that compares against the other mice that we've tested on standard feet here, you can see it's performing really well. It's certainly down at the bottom range here in the average, which is good to see. So let's take a look at the dimensions. So the length comes in at 124.1 millimeters. The rear comes in at 67.8 millimeters. The middle top comes in at 51.8 millimeters. I took a reading for the middle because of the shape of this mouse. That comes in at 60.5 millimeters. The bottom comes in at 60 millimeters. The front comes in at 63.1 millimeters. When we take a look at the height here, the rear comes in at 36.1 millimeters. The middle comes in at 42.2 millimeters. And the front comes in at 25.5 millimeters. The width of the front left button is 25.6 millimeters. And the right width came in at 24.4 millimeters. I'm not sure whether this may be slightly smaller, the right one here, but it certainly was when I measured it here. The thickness of the scroll wheel is 7.5 millimeters, and the length of it is 26 millimeters. So it's not too thick, the scroll wheel. For me, it's probably about the right size. The cable here has some good flex in it. It's certainly more flexible than an Air 58 in terms of bending it over right at the edge here, which maybe does mean that this is a power cord cable that they've attached, and it doesn't have any kind of protective inside to it. I'd only find that out once I strip it down though to see. The cable comes in a good length of 1.8 meters, which is pretty standard for all mice. What's nice to see, and if you've been watching my channel, you know I have a bit of a gripe with it, is when vendors don't send you software, like Zowie for some reason, who's a big company, should provide software. And it's nice to see here that the mouse here comes with software that allows you to customize it to how you want to be. I did have a little bit of an issue here where I couldn't originally connect the mouse and the software together. I had to firmware it, and I contacted X-Ray Pad here, and they came back to me very quickly, and we worked it out, and now I can report it's working no problem. I don't expect you to have a problem with this. This is probably an early version here, but if you do have that problem, give them a quick shout or look at their website just to download the firmware, and you can firmware it, and then you shouldn't have an issue either. So what can you do in the software? Well, you can do the usual things. You can assign buttons for whichever mapping that you like. There was a cool option here I saw for rapid fire. You can adjust the lift-off distance from 2 millimeters to 3 millimeters. One of the things that would be nicer to see here is the ability to be a little bit more customized within the DPI adjustments here. You can only adjust it in 100 increments. I'd like to see at least 50 here per increment. And one of the things here is you can't tell how much you're increasing it by because the software doesn't adjust. So again, a little bit of a tweak in the software there. You can change the RGB lighting here, which is good. We're not able to remap the profile buttons on the base, which is a little bit of a shame here. It would have been nice to do that. And when you're changing the profile on the bottom of the base, the DPI profile, you can't tell what profile you're on because there's no indication on the mouse itself. And in the software, there's a ratio button that moves, but it's grey and it's not very obvious where it is. So it'd be nice to make some amendments there to allow us to be able to see what profile setting we're on. It's good to see you can create multiple profiles here, and you can also export them or copy them, which is good. And overall, the software is decent, and a few little tweaks here will just bring it up that little extra notch that it needs, in my opinion. So overall, my conclusion is, while this mouse is good for the price, definitely, it comes with decent components here. We're certainly going to find out when we open it up. You can tell that already, I think, by just how it feels and what they're saying. We know it's got a decent sensor. The shell, which is one of the most important things, is rock solid. I think for an ergonomic shape, it's certainly very similar to the EC2 here that I've seen already, because I've got one there. If you want me to compare, let me know. And for an ergonomic style, this is probably the lightest on the market that I've seen out there. If not, put in the comments, let me know and I'll take a look at it. But for me, this looks like the lightest at the moment that you can get currently. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if you want to say anything else in these videos, because I'm open to it. So I'll see you all soon. Catch you later. Bye bye.